Everyone needs a break sometimes. That's what I've been told, at least. I really wish I didn't take one, though. But then again, maybe it was inevitable that that thing would be delivered to my door. Leading up to what happened, I had been working a lot at my office job, and it had taken a huge toll on my physical and mental health. I didn't really have a choice. How else was I supposed to make enough money to survive in this world? I didn't want to take a break, but my family practically begged me to. Work had completely consumed my life to the point where I didn't really feel anything at all. Not stress, not joy, nothing. Just going through with the day to day. Luckily, because of all the work I'd done, I had quite a few vacation days to use up. So I took a week off, mostly just to appease my worried family. I didn't go anywhere though. I just stayed home. Considering the fact that I ended up in this place, I'd say it didn't really help. During my first day off, I slept in a lot, to around noon. I was woken up by the doorbell. I didn't realize it at first, since I was still groggy. But after it rang a few more times, I finally dragged myself out of bed, grumbling to myself. When I opened the door, there was nobody there. I leaned out and looked around, but still, no one. I immediately thought that I was ding-dong ditched by some annoying kids, and so I scoffed and turned to go back inside. But then I saw it. A box on my doorstep. It was about 1 foot long, 1/2 foot wide, and 1/2 foot tall. And there was a note taped on the top of the box with words scribbled onto it in childlike handwriting. It said, "Take care of me. I'm lonely." I thought it was strange because I didn't remember ordering anything or being told I would be sent a gift. I was wary about bringing it inside, but the note piqued my curiosity. Who was me? I hoped that nobody had sent me some live animal or something. I picked the box up and brought it into my kitchen. I set it down on the table in the middle of the room and took a knife to cut off the tape and open the box. What I saw inside was unexpected, to say the least. It was a doll. Its body was plastic, and its face was unnaturally smooth and baby-like, as most dolls typically are. That's one thing that always bothered me about dolls, how perfectly smooth their skin is, and how exaggerated their proportions are. It had unusually large eyes that stared up at the ceiling, even bigger than what you'd expect from a normal doll. It had a small button nose and large round cheeks tinted with red. The corners of its mouth were tilted upward in a gap-toothed smile. Its head looked too big for its small and petite body. Bouncy golden curls hung down from its scalp, and it wore a frilly pink dress. I hated it. It was far too girly for my tastes. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just was never my style. I stayed far away from dolls when I was a child. My stupid childhood imagination convinced me that they were secretly alive for the longest time. My mom has told me several times the stories of how I would cower in the corner of my room every time she got me a doll. Young me was convinced that they were watching me. Silly, right? I don't think it's so silly anymore. Anyway, back to the doll. I was confused, but I assumed it was just delivered to the wrong house, that it was probably supposed to go to some little girl down the street or something. I decided that I would return it, but not until a little later. I was still tired from having just woken up and wanted to sleep in some more. So I closed the box, grabbed a snack, and went back to bed. I don't know how long I slept, but when I woke up, I was still tired. Maybe it was because I really was just so overworked. I didn't feel like laying in bed any longer, So I dragged myself out and made my way back to the kitchen. I had forgotten about the whole doll situation, so I was briefly surprised when I saw the box on the table. But then I remembered that I was supposed to try to return it or resend it to its correct address. The idea of going out, even if it was just to drop off the package at the post office, was very unappealing for me. I didn't feel like doing anything but lounging around on my couch and watching some random drama on TV. But I knew it'd be good to go out for a bit. When I approached the package, however, and looked inside, it was empty. I still wasn't completely awake, so I just stared at the empty box for a long time, as if the doll would magically materialize in front of my eyes. I could have sworn that I left it right in that box. I didn't touch it, and I didn't move it. So where did it go? Or was it just a dream? But then I felt a shiver go up my spine as I got this strange yet familiar feeling of being watched. The same exact feeling I would get as a kid with my dolls. That's when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. I slowly lifted my head and focused on the figure I had noticed. It was the doll, sitting in the darkest part of the counter, up against the wall, where light barely reached. It was staring at me, and not in an "it just so happened to be facing me" kind of way. In fact, its body and head were tilted slightly away from me, but its eyes were looking right at me. I was immediately reminded of my childhood fears, of curling up in the corner of my room as my dolls stared at me. But I snapped myself out of it. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm more logical now. That's what I told myself to calm down. I told myself that I must have moved it and just forgot. That it was just a coincidence that I happened to be standing in the exact area that it was looking at. Still, the thing creeped me out, and at that point, I didn't want to take any chances. Despite my attempts at logic, I knew my imagination would spiral out of control if I kept it in my house. So I grabbed it, brought it outside, and tossed it in a dumpster a block or two away, just to be safe. I didn't care anymore about returning it to whoever had shipped it. I then returned to my house and threw the box in the trash. Then I went about my day. Over and over, my thoughts kept returning to the doll, despite my best efforts to tell myself that I was safe. But no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't remember even taking the doll out of the box, let alone moving it to the counter. I needed to distract myself. I don't really have any hobbies or friends outside of work, so I just started trying a bunch of different things my parents and siblings had suggested. I tried crocheting and baking, among other things. None of them really captured my attention, though. I couldn't get into them. It was difficult to get my hands to do the things they needed to do, to find the motivation to actually do them. I just chalked it up to exhaustion. After trying and failing at those, I just watched TV and ate junk food for the rest of the day. I went to sleep late into the night and dreamt. I dreamt of the doll. It spoke to me in the dream, saying the same thing over and over again, asking if we could be together. And right before I woke up, sometime in the afternoon again, I heard the words, "I am back." I didn't really pay the dream any mind. After all, I've had stranger dreams that didn't mean anything. I knew I was rid of the doll and had nothing else to worry about. How wrong I was. Hunger drove me out of bed, but I quickly found out that I was out of food. I didn't remember how long it had been since I last went to the store. Usually I just ordered takeout for dinner after work. I would have to go buy some more groceries. It would be good for me. I knew that. But I really didn't want to. Still, I didn't feel like arguing with my stomach that day, so I put on some shoes and opened the front door to leave. I screamed when I saw the doll again, sitting on my doorstep. I know that's a bit of an overreaction, but I couldn't help it. That thing made me jumpy. How did it get back? I could have sworn I tossed it the day before, yet there it was, back on my doorstep, just sitting there. I knew I threw it in the dumpster. I knew I did. The evidence for that was written all over its hair and clothes. There were remnants of a moldy banana peel stuck in its now messy and frizzy hair, and its dress was covered in greasy, unidentifiable stains. Yet it had still returned to my doorstep. My shock and fear quickly turned to anger as the idea that I was being pranked started to form in my mind. It had to be a prank, I thought, because there was no way that the doll was alive and moving on its own. Someone was pulling a prank on me and trying to creep me out. That was the excuse I told myself, even though that would mean that someone had to have broken into my house to take the doll out of the box and put it on my counter the previous day. Not many people would be willing to go that far for a prank on someone they barely know, but I needed some way to give it a logical explanation. I didn't believe in the paranormal back then, so it had to be an annoying neighbor or something. I brought the doll back inside, took the original box back out, and shoved it in. The box didn't have a return address or anything, but I was too upset to care or notice. I did a sloppy job of sealing the box up, and then I drove over to the nearest mail office and had it shipped to the other side of the country to some random address. I didn't care where, I just wanted it gone. I was trying to have a nice, normal, relaxing break from work, and that doll was ruining everything. Having it mailed off was the only way I could think of to make it impossible for whoever it was that was pranking me to get their hands on the doll again. Afterward, I didn't go back home. I spent the rest of the day out and about. I needed to stay out of my house to cool down, get something to eat, and get some groceries. Then I went to my bathroom in my bedroom to brush my teeth, and that's when I saw a piece of paper taped to my bathroom mirror. I froze when I saw it before taking a step closer. I took the paper in my hand and studied what was on it. It was a drawing, scrawled on in a childlike manner, with what appeared to be black and yellow crayon. Except I didn't remember having any crayons, or taping anything to my mirror. The drawing was simple, depicting a tall figure with short hair and a smaller figure with golden curls. I couldn't help but think that the tall figure kind of looked like me, and the smaller one looked like the doll. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. My mind briefly flickered to the thought of being pranked again, but it was much harder to believe it that time. Surely if someone broke into my house and snuck into my bathroom, I would have heard them. I mean, you have to go into my room to get to the master bathroom, and I'm a pretty light sleeper. So, who put that drawing in my bathroom? The hair at the back of my neck started to stand on end. Once again, I felt my childhood fears flare up, and I got the sense that I was being watched. I slowly turned around, but I didn't see anything. The doll wasn't there. But of course it wasn't. I shipped it away. I looked everywhere around my room and house, but didn't find the doll anywhere. The drawing clenched in my hand the entire time. I convinced myself to just forget about it. The doll was gone, and it would stay gone. I repeated that to myself over and over as I threw the drawing away and went to bed. I should have booked it out of there, but I didn't. I was too stubborn for my own good. Had I known how dangerous that thing was, had I known that there was someone who could help me, that you guys existed. Anyway, it took a long time for me to fall asleep, but when I did, I heard its voice again. I remember it clearly. It said, "I did this for you." I woke up early the next day to the sound of slow, quiet music. It sounded like a music box, but it was very faint, as if it were coming from a different room. In my tired state, I wasn't entirely sure that there even was music playing, but as I came to my senses, my brain finally registered that something wasn't right. I wasn't playing that music. And when I had that realization, I bolted upright in bed, eyes wide. My heart leapt to my throat. I didn't want to step out of my room. I didn't want to risk confirming my suspicions. Logically, it couldn't possibly be back. But I knew that it was. Despite everything, it was definitely back. Logic didn't matter anymore. It was back, and I needed to get rid of it. It was that thought that finally drove me out of bed into my bedroom door. I opened it, and the music got louder. Loud enough that I could hear the details. It was a pretty song, but it had a hint of uncanniness. With each step I took towards it, it got louder and louder. Each chiming note tolled through the air and reverberated across the rooms. The kind you'd expect to go along with a nursery rhyme or something. Every time the song ended, there would be a pause, then it would start up again. I kept going until the kitchen just barely came to view, and I froze when I saw it. The kitchen was dark, the curtains drawn closed. Instead, there was a dim glow emanating from the room. I had to force my frozen body to take another step so I could see more. Then another. Then another. My movements were stiff and my thoughts raced with horrible ideas of what I might see. But eventually, I was able to fully peek around the corner. I drew in a sharp breath. The room was lit up by several tall candles that seemed to give off a horrible burning smell, a smell that vaguely reminded me of burned meat. They stood ominously up from the dining table that was in the middle of the room. The table was covered in a white, lacy tablecloth that was stained red in various places. I dared not think of what those stains could be from. My breathing sped up, and my palms grew sweaty as I took everything in. 2 sets of dishes were delicately laid out on each end of the table. Each set included a small plate, a teacup, and a spoon. In the middle of the table sat a plate of cookies. 2 of the chairs had been removed from the sides of the table, leaving only 2 on the ends, facing each other. The doll sat on the chair on the far end. It was back. Of course it was. And it was looking right at me again. When my eyes met with the doll's, my heart leapt to my throat and my breathing grew even more intense. It sat in the chair, which appeared to have been modified to accommodate its small stature. One of its tiny hands rested on its teacup. The other hand held a paper. I got the sense that it was waiting for me to join it. I stood there, frozen for a long time, as if I expected it to jump up and run at me at any moment. But it didn't. It just stared, and I stared back, listening to that haunting music play on repeat. Every bone in my body told me to run, but to where? Who's to say it wouldn't find me again? I didn't know what to do. After much debate, I stepped into the room, the uncanny music filling the air. It didn't move. I tried flipping on the light switch, but nothing happened. I stepped forward, then kept going until I reached the table, the side opposite to where the doll was sitting. When I finally tore my gaze away from it, I saw that there were at least 20 drawings taped onto the walls. The drawings were all identical to the one I found the night before. I looked down at the empty chair, then at the side of the table just in front of it. There was a napkin with the words, "For you," scribbled onto it. The teacup was filled with a strange, black liquid. I took the cup and brought it to my nose to sniff it. A sharp, bitter smell filled my nostrils. For me? There was no way I was going to drink it. I put the cup back down and worked up the courage to move closer to the doll. I avoided looking directly into its eyes. They unsettled me with how they watched me. As I did, I paused by the plate of cookies. I could see mold growing on them and flies flying around them. Finally, I reached the doll. The music was louder right next to it. The music was coming from inside of it. Still avoiding the doll's gaze, I hesitantly took the paper from its tiny hand and looked at it. On it was a drawing, the same drawing as all the other ones, except for one extra detail. A face was drawn onto the tall figure's head, the doll's face. A chill went down my spine. I looked around at the room, the table, the candles, the cookies, everything. It was for me. It was all for me. A haunting tea party. That doll had set it up somehow, but I had a feeling that the intentions behind everything weren't all that sweet. That doll was alive. It was alive and it was targeting me. I didn't know what I did to it, what I did to deserve all of this happening to me. I just wanted it gone. And if it really was alive, that meant it could be killed too. I was desperate at that point. I remember hearing something at some point in my life about fire being effective at getting rid of curses. And I didn't know what else it could be other than a curse. So that's what I did. I hesitantly took the doll in my hands, half expecting it to lurch at me. But when it didn't, I took it straight to my bathroom and tossed it in the bathtub, trembling the entire time. For a while, I just stood there and stared at it, trying to think of a way I could set it on fire in a way that would completely destroy it. It was difficult to keep my thoughts straight for more than a few seconds. I needed to calm down before I could do anything else. I was hyperventilating at that point, and it was only getting worse. My breaths were coming out in quick, sharp gasps. My thoughts kept going back to my childhood. I kept remembering all the fears I had experienced as a child with my dolls. It was all coming back to me. I felt lightheaded. I clutched my chest and took a few minutes to calm myself just enough to think somewhat clearly. Then I remembered that I kept rubbing alcohol in my bathroom drawer. It would be perfect. I grabbed the rubbing alcohol and just dumped the whole thing into the bathtub, the sickening smell filling my nostrils. I made sure to douse every inch of that cursed doll, from its stupidly golden hair to its frilly pink dress. All the while, the haunting music played, muffled by the liquid. Then I took a lighter from my kitchen and set the doll ablaze. I stood there the entire time, even as the smell of burning plastic filled the air, even as I could feel the heat against my skin. I had to know. I had to make sure that it would be destroyed. The music gurgled and glitched, turning into a foul and broken down melody. The sound pierced the air and hurt my ears, but I still had to make sure. I could see its face melting, which only made it even more creepy. One of its eyes fell out, leaving only a black abyss in its wake. Smoke filled the air, and I opened the window, but still, I didn't leave. Its clothes turned black and frayed. I half expected to hear the thing scream or some other horrible noise, but only the music played, until it didn't anymore. I waited there until the fire finally died down. I tried not to look at the doll as I pushed it closer to the bathtub faucet with a broom. I ran water over it to cool it down, then I scooped it in a trash bag. I still didn't feel safe. My breathing was still heavy. My palms were still sweaty. There had to be more I could do to destroy it. I decided I would bury it somewhere far away. I didn't let myself think that through as I put on some slippers and went inside. I got in my car with the doll and just drove in a random direction. My thoughts were too scrambled to pick a destination. I drove for about 10 minutes before finding a park. I got out and knelt on the grass, placing the bag down beside me. I desperately tugged at the grass and dirt with my bare hands until I had dug a hole deep enough to fit the bag. I didn't care if anyone saw what I was doing. Then I dumped it in and covered it up. Dirt worked its way under my fingernails, but I didn't care. I was shaking, and I had been the entire time. A sense of deep dread had been building up inside of me the moment I set the doll on fire. It had only been getting worse as time went on. I was doing whatever I could to relieve my fears, but it was only getting worse and worse. The drive back home wasn't easy. My heart pounded so loudly, I swear I could hear it echoing in my ears. I could barely focus on the road as my vision went in and out of blurriness. The broken melody of the burning doll played over and over in my head. My childhood fears wouldn't go away. I started to question everything. All those stories that my mom had told me about me thinking the dolls were alive. Was my child self right? Were those dolls actually alive? Did they torture me the same way this doll was torturing me now? Before I knew it, I had arrived home and had staggered my way inside. I sunk down onto my couch, staring at the floor. I didn't bother to clean up the tea party in my kitchen or the mess in my bathtub. I felt as if I had committed some egregious crime. I got the sense that I was going to be punished for what I did. I didn't feel safe. I no longer believed that what I did killed it. I knew it would just come back. I tried calling the police, my voice barely legible due to how much it was shaking. They didn't believe me. They thought it was some kind of prank call. Looking back, I guess I don't really blame them. I mean, who would believe that a doll was terrorizing me? I must have sounded so crazy. I definitely felt crazy after the call. I didn't want to sleep in my house that night, but I had nowhere else to go. No friends, and my family lived in a different state. And even if I did find some place to stay, I was sure the doll would find me again. It always did. So I just went back to bed. What else could I do? It took a long time for me to finally fall asleep. When I did, I dreamed of the doll again in its melted form. When it spoke, its voice was garbled and glitchy, but I could still understand what it said. "You're so mean." The next day, I woke up, but didn't open my eyes. I was too scared to. My body was shaking. I could feel a very faint puff of air against my face. There was a pause, then I felt it again, and again. Breathing. Something was breathing on me. I didn't have to think hard to figure out what it was. I didn't want to open my eyes. I wanted to keep them shut forever, to pretend that it was all a dream or a figment of my imagination. But at the same time, I couldn't. That overwhelming sense of being watched was looming over me again, and I wanted to get rid of it. So I took a chance and opened my eyes. I'm sure you could guess what I saw. The doll. Its entire face was melted and its hands were too. One of its eyes were missing while the other was half closed as the plastic above had melted down and started to fuse with it. Entire chunks of its hair were missing, with the rest being burned black, and its clothes weren't any better. Part of its mouth had also melted off, leaving an open hole exposed to the outside. I screamed and chucked it off my bed without even really thinking. I was expecting the doll, but the horror of seeing it up close had scared me and made me react harshly. I felt an unbearable sense of dread build up inside of me, as if I had done something horribly wrong. I bolted upright and saw that my room looked different. The walls were covered, top to bottom, in drawings, hundreds of them, all of the same thing that all the other drawings were of. A small figure with golden hair, and a tall figure with the doll's face on it. Suddenly, the doll started speaking from the floor, its voice broken and robotic. The sound made me jump as my eyes went towards it. The voice played over and over again. My breathing got heavier and heavier. I wanted to scream and shout, but no sound would come out of my mouth. I covered my ears to block out its voice, but froze when I touched my own skin. It felt strange, foreign, hard, almost like plastic. Panicked, I frantically felt at my face. Half of it was smooth, too smooth. I jumped out of bed and looked down at my body. I was wearing some kind of frilly pink dress, the exact same dress that the doll was wearing before I set it on fire. I rushed to my bathroom to look in my mirror, but it was covered in drawings as well, so I tore them down and gasped at my appearance. My hair was turning blonde and curling up at the ends. My face was smooth as if carved out of stone, and it wasn't my own. I was horrified. All the while, the sounds of the doll speaking rose higher and higher until I couldn't take it anymore. "Stop, stop," I cried, rushing back into my room. "Stop, please. I'll play with you. Just stop." The doll went silent, and the dread that was suffocating me died down. I felt almost at peace, as if I had finally done something right. But the fear was still there. From then on, I dedicated myself to that doll, going along with all the games and things it wanted to do. Somehow, I knew exactly what it wanted. I spent a long time there. I couldn't escape. It had somehow locked the doors and windows that led outside. And every time I attempted to escape, I would be punished. I would become more like it, more immobile. Even now, I can barely move my left arm. Eventually, I gave up on resisting. I even started to enjoy it, playing with that doll. There was nothing else I could really do but heed its every desire. A week passed and I was still trapped in my own house. Food ran out. Family and coworkers reached out, but I couldn't do anything about them. Another week passed and I was starving, but there was nothing I could do. The doll was my only friend. That is, until you guys found me. So, I've told you everything I know, everything you wanted to hear. Now please, let me go. I have to get back to her. She's upset with me, I can feel it. And every day I'm away from her, it gets harder and harder to move. Hey everyone. In case you didn't know, I'm Amethescent, and that was my second CreepyDrawsta. A doll was delivered to my door. I hope you liked it. A lot of work went into creating this video, including the song that played during the tea party scene. That was my attempt at making a creepy song. I do have a little experience making music. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, there's a chance you'll never see my content again. But if you have, you can definitely expect more of this kind of content in the future. And if you're interested in more of my art, feel free to follow me on Instagram. The link's in the description. Take care and farewell.